Are you looking to be best mates with an expensive chiropractor and have him on speed dial? You've clicked on the wrong video. But for everyone else that wants to fix their horrible ride while still maintaining that great handling your sporty car provides, keep watching! You might think your springs and dampers are the only villain in a back-breaking story, but like the various nefarious cartels that exist in the Breaking Bad universe, that's simply not true. Factors such as suspension bushings, bump stops, wheels and tyres all play a part in giving you, in extreme circumstances, a torturous experience. After we talk shop about some basics regarding the types of suspension and why these factors can cause a stiff ride, we'll provide solutions which maintain a good balance of sharp handling and soft ride quality, taking into consideration your drivetrain as well, whether front wheel drive, all wheel drive or rear wheel drive. With that out of the way, let's begin. To understand the root cause of poor ride quality, we're going to break down the car suspension system into two parts, the front and rear suspension. While the type of suspension doesn't make as big of a difference to your ride quality as actual suspension components, this can heavily influence your stock spring rates and the tuning of your stock dampers, as manufacturers may make concessions to your sporty car to make handling feel as sharp as possible, but of course, at the cost of a stiff ride. Let's briefly sum up front suspension. Whilst the McPherson strut connects the car's body to the wheel axle through one wishbone, double wishbones use two. The ride quality in both cars at, legal speeds and on poor pavement is not too drastic of a difference, as both setups are fully independent, meaning one wheel can react to bumps without affecting the other. But here's the thing. Struts often handle worse than the double wishbone setup. This is as the top wishbone is shorter than the other, and when the suspension is compressed, you get camber gain, meaning increased negative camber. Struts unfortunately don't work like this. In fact, they tend to have more positive camber. The real difference in how crashy your car feels on poor roads, however, will be what's in your rear suspension. The main villain here is what we call torsion beam rear suspension. It's a setup that manufacturers have switched to for better packaging and NVH, but honestly, for ride quality, it sucks. Let's explain why. Unlike McPherson struts, the rear wheels have a lot less independence to act and think on their own whims. It's like a dictatorship. This is as a simple torsion beam links the two rear wheels together, so if say the right rear wheel crashes, the left one will feel a similar force as well. So unless your rear suspension is well damped, you're often going to feel a shudder in your car if you're driving on a poorly maintained highway. Double wishbones and multi-link rear suspensions on the other hand don't suffer the same linked fate like Romeo and Juliet, as they're fully independent setups where one jolt through the wheel won't affect the other. But what if you have those types of suspensions and still feel your ride is crashy? Could it be that the springs and shocks are too stiff? Let's find out. Let's first briefly get into what springs and shocks are before we get into why these are often the main culprit for poor quality ride and consequently your back problems. The most important thing is the spring. This allows your car to go over things like speed bumps without the entire car shuddering and falling apart, as its job is to push up against the car's weight to support it at a specific ride height. Now, a spring rate will be how much force is required to compress a spring by a specific amount. For example, the new GR86 has a 4K rear spring rate from stock, meaning it takes 4 kilos of force to compress the spring by 1mm. So what are shock absorbers then? Also called dampers, it's installed with a spring so that these spring bounces are lowered to a reasonable degree, where you feel somewhat comfortable. But here's the problem. A shock absorber doesn't actually make the spring softer, it only controls how fast it moves, and when you have a stiff or oversprung damper, whether mechanical, hydraulic or electronic, your suspension will compress and rebound less, meaning you get a very stiff and crashy ride. So what's the easiest thing to do when you're designing a sporty car? Just stiffen those spring rates and dampers to stop body roll. This is as hot hatches, sports sedans and performance SUVs often have a higher center of gravity, meaning there will be more body roll, so those spring rates have to be stiff so that the car can stay relatively flat in the corners. Stiffer springs also reduce excessive weight transfer, especially when your car is subjected to high G cornering when pitching to maximize as much grip as possible. But that's still not the entire story. Stay with me as we go over two other overlooked villains in the suspenseful tale of back-breaking proportions. Guess what car part perfectly exemplifies the term breaking bad? It's suspension bushings. These start off as good-natured and humble in keeping your ride smooth and comfortable while isolating your suspension's movement from emitting too much noise, vibration and harshness into your car. To do this, they're shaped as small, rubbly blobs which are placed at each suspension mounting point. But just like all car parts, these can eventually wear out, and when they break bad, they're showed a more harsh side, making your ride quality worse to the point where they can cause dreadful clunky noises to creep into the cabin, especially over bumps. Now let's introduce a new term into the mix. Suspension travel. What is it exactly? This is basically the vertical distance of how much your suspension travels. This travel is essentially split into two parts. The compression stroke, which is when the wheel moves upwards, and then the rebound stroke, which is when the wheel moves downwards. To ensure that this distance is limited so that the chassis and the suspension don't completely explode and fall apart when you hit large potholes the size of a crater, car brands include what we call bump stops. When we talk about the sporty cars you own, there are a few reasons why bump stops can in fact cause bad ride quality. In these cars, which usually have shorter suspension travel and stiff bump stops due to aesthetics and handling, these bump stops will engage too early. So instead of the spring going through its usual compression and rebound strokes, your ride feels crashy on poorly paved surfaces. And of course, if you have rubber runs, they'll wear out eventually as well, so they'll lose their absorption abilities. So what to do here? Just replace them with new ones, preferably OEM, but some other rubber ones will work as well. Also, if your car has an independent rear suspension setup, you can also look at replacing the suspension bushings with softer ones instead, as these have more joints, meaning more stiff bushings which can reduce compliance. But we're not done yet. What possible enemies are out there next? It's your... Alright, wheels and tyres, the feet of your car. How do they play a part in all of this? Well, when we talk about fun hot hatches nowadays, as they all sit higher than your usual low slung sports coupe and make like 300 horsepower, they need big wheels and big tyres so that they've got more grip to go blazingly quick on a track. Problem is though, these big wheels and big tyres, in the case of the FK8 Honda Civic Type R, which uses 20-inch wheels and 245/30 R20 tyres, mean that they often end up with a rubber band sidewall. So what does this mean exactly? As the tyres are so thin because of that sidewall, they will absorb the various bumps in the road much worse than say my Orion with a sidewall that's twice as thick as it uses 215/60 R16. This is as with a larger wheel, the tyre has less area to fill out in the wheel gaps, so as you gotta go thinner, the sidewall will be much smaller. Larger wheels are usually heavier, so this means more unsprung mass, so the extra mass will drop back into your car's body when you go over potholes and speed bumps, causing a stiff ride. Your tyre pressure as well is another important thing to check, as if your tyres are underinflated, then you have a jiggly ride, but if your tyres are overinflated, your tyres will be less likely to absorb poor roads, and it will cause a jarring ride. Right, let's start by trying to help you fix your ride quality, starting with the main villains, the springs and shocks. But what if my car has adaptive suspension? Well, chances are if you're always in comfort mode and still feel a sense that your back may break in the next couple of business days, you've come to the right place. If you happen to have an F45 Type R, you may be in luck, as a popular modification done by F45 owners is changing the damper module to the DE5 Type S instead, so you get a softer ride throughout. But if you can't readily change the damper modules to softer ones, these mechanical fixes will help you go on your merry way. You may assume softer linear springs are the solution, but these can come with the caveat of having to raise the ride due to them having more suspension travel and more body roll, which isn't good when we talk about sporty cars that need to have sharp handling. When you have to raise the ride, you have to also replace your wheels and tyres a size down so that they don't rub. Progressive lowering springs like the iBack Pro Kit allow for improved ride comfort whilst maintaining or even enhancing your handling characteristics. A good set of progressive lowering springs not only allows for a lower center of gravity, but also reduces body roll during cornering. When the spring becomes stiffer under load, it will help you maintain camber for sharper turning and control pitch and acceleration and braking, which is basically body roll but from front to rear rather than side to side. And most importantly, you're on your merry way to getting that stance boy look. But if you have a steep driveway or you're navigating around speed bumps and so on, then we recommend you get springs that don't end up reducing the ground clearance by too much. Replacing your shocks, in particular your rear ones, if you have a crashy torsion beam setup, is going to be the best solution on a budget. This is as good quality shocks will improve how the suspension absorbs bumps without making the car too soft or floaty. Of course, if your front suspension feels more crashy than the rear, replace the front shocks. Now you might ask, how do we go about choosing the right shocks? We'll need a combination of soft compression damping paired with stiff rebound damping to absorb rough roads at road legal speeds, as well as to optimize the Tyres contact patch for the best grip. Keeping these considerations in mind, the SARC 313 593s designed for the FN2 Civic Type R are a twin tube damper system, meaning they are designed for comfort, but they are also gas pressurized. Having gas pressure in the shock absorber helps maintain consistent damping performance and reduces aeration, which is the formation of air bubbles in the shock fluid. This can improve handling by reducing fading under stress, which is important for maintaining control during aggressive driving. Not only that, but by providing stable damping, your back can be saved from breaking in the future. So in theory, this is a great combo that fits the parameters we've defined to find the perfect setup for the street. But what if you wanted something a bit more hardcore? Well, monotube dampers can be a better choice if your handling is high-speed corners rather than tight technical corners. This is as compared to twin tube dampers, monotubes offer better damping against high-speed impacts, reducing harshness from sudden bumps. They're often used in race cars as their damping forces give the driver better control and precision on the limit. Keep in mind though that if you prioritize ride comfort, monotube dampers can be a bit stiffer than the twin tube setup as the gas pressure in the shock absorbers is higher. So what if both sides of your car feel crashy over bumps and you have a lot more cash on your hands? Well, we recommend coilovers. Coilovers are great as they basically combine both the spring and shock absorber in one package. But let's address a misconception in the room first. When people think of coilovers, they often think every coilover in history can adjust everything from spring rates to compression and rebound rates. Well, that's not quite true. Normal, non-adjustable coilovers can only change your ride height, and that doesn't quite address our problem with back-breaking ride quality. Whilst usually quite expensive, two-way high-quality adjustable coilovers such as Olin's Road and Track are the game changer here, as they can independently adjust both rebound and compression damping, so that you can either have a soft ride for daily driving or a stiff but communicative ride during track days. But if you want to burn even more money to get the best of the best, go for a three-way adjustable coilover setup, as the compression damping is now split into two parts. High speed to deal with hitting a small pothole on the freeway or landing from a jump at the Nürburgring, and low speed to deal with small bumps in the road or reducing body roll and dive during aggressive driving. With any adjustable coilover setup, you can also swap out springs that are either soft or stiff to suit your needs. Now, how exactly to hone your suspension setup using coilovers? Let's find out based on your drivetrain and how you want your car to behave during cornering. If you're struggling with understeer at the limit in your front wheel drive or all wheel drive setup, ensure your car's rear spring rates are stiffer than your front spring rates, but not to the point where it crashes over bumps badly. You'll also want to increase compression damping in the rear to control the rear end's movement more effectively during cornering, so that it doesn't step out on you, especially in high speed cornering. Look at softening the rebound damping in the rear as well, to allow it to return to its normal position more quickly and prevent it from feeling too stiff and unresponsive. For the front, we recommend softening both compression and rebound damping so that the tyres maintain better contact with the road, especially through more aggressive turns, while also helping with a smoother ride when driving on uneven surfaces. But if you're struggling with oversteer at the limit in your rear-wheel drive car, maybe because the wheelbase is very short in say a S2000, or it has a rear mid-engine layout like an MR2 that stiffen up the front spring rates more than your rear spring rates. Again, keeping in mind ride quality if you do decide to daily drive this. When adjusting damping, you'll want to increase both the compression and rebound damping in the front to prevent excessive dive so that you get better control of the front end during aggressive braking and cornering. Stiffening the front compression damping will also help control body roll and improve turn-in. In the rear, look to soften the compression damping slightly to allow the rear tyres to better absorb the bumps on the road or track so that the rear end doesn't break your back. For rebound, slightly stiffer damping can help prevent the rear from squatting too much under acceleration, keeping the rear end more planted and balanced during cornering. Let's now look at how downsizing your wheels and tyres can help. What are the best hot hatches of all time? But the FK8 Civic Type R has one big gripe owners often face. The wheels are way too big and can crack easily whilst causing a jittery ride, despite its class-leading suspension tune in comfort mode. The funny and unique size of the 245/30 R20 tyres also are expensive and harder to source as well. So what do owners first do? Downsize them. A setup that a few owners have used to maintain steering feel and handling while solving ride quality is going down to 18-inch wheels that are 265/35 in tyre size. This works as the sidewall has now been increased, so those road imperfections are absorbed much better than the stock 245/30 R20 tyres, but it's not too big of an increase in the interest of keeping grip levels high. The smaller wheels also reduce the unsprung weight, so you don't get sudden jolts when going over bumps at any speed. You may notice as well that the tyre is a bit wider, and this is to increase the contact patch so that you get more grip up the limit. So if your car has stock tyres that are 18 inches or greater with a sidewall of 40 or less, we recommend downsizing by going an inch or two down. If your wheels are 20 inches, and adjust the width on sidewall based on your preferences, ensuring the sidewall isn't too thick so you lose most of your handling. Let's now head into the concluding remarks. What can we take from this video? That Breaking Bad is the greatest show of all time? Probably. But in reality, trying to balance between great handling and great ride comfort is in some ways possible. So why do more manufacturers implement this in stock cars? Let's examine. Firstly, many adaptive suspension systems are far more complex and costly to develop and manufacture on a mass scale. And when you consider that cars such as the Suzuki Swift Sport and the Mazda 3 don't quite sell in droves, it doesn't make much sense. Secondly, if every manufacturer chucked in adjustable two-way coilovers that rival a good set of Olens from the factory in a mass-produced sports car, it doesn't quite add up for the profit margins. If you stayed on to the end, thank you so much. I hope this pointed you and hopefully your car in the right direction. And you would have just hit 1,000 subscribers, and I couldn't be more grateful for all your support throughout these last 4.5 months. If you're interested in fixing your handling as well as other guides on our channel, click on these. Thanks again, and I'll see you in a bit.